nothing is easy. That
Right.
would just be my mantra on my grave, is nothing that feels like it's going to be easy is easy.
Passion, bringing life to a vision, sharing a story, everyone listen. Wind in her hair, rolling toward the unknown.
There are events that are very poorly run.
Mm-hmm.
Like any other industry, you know, we have, I don't want to say charlatans, but people who are not as customer centric. Some are really customer centric and they do everything to make sure that everybody gets what they need, and some are not. And so you also have to do I think, again, research. You have to really determine whether there's enough there to make it worth your while or your company's while. So that's what I would say.
So you're putting the onus on the people, which I think is a really strong thing to do, to understand the event, the quality of the event, and then how that fits into the company's strategy and their role. That makes sense.
And the value, you know,
And the
it's got to be a value prop. Yeah.
Yep. And I also like that you mentioned having a game plan. I'm like you. There are events that I do not go to. I just don't, industry events, because when I think about the value I want to get out of them or what my game plan is, if I don't believe it can be achieved, I'm out, right? If it's whatever that might look like. So I agree with you on that too. The other thing that we do is we try to understand people that are going to those events and connect with them before, if we can, just to make a connection and say, hey, I would love to meet you, if that's one of your goals, to expand your network. So,
absolutely. Again, all this goes into, I know, everything is extra work, right? Yeah. Nothing is easy. You say, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to contact 30 people. So, you know, maybe I'll get 5 appointments, right? To do that, you're going to write the email. It's going to be wrong. It's going to have a typo. Somebody's going to have to check. Like, nothing is easy. That would just be my mantra on my grave, is nothing that feels like it's going to be easy is easy. It's not necessarily the hardest thing, but it's never as easy as you know, oh, we rolling off a log. Nothing's rolling off a log. But that level of detail and planning, and I'm not a detail person. I think I have ADD. I really I split from flower to flower, but I have forced myself over the years to focus on what really makes a difference. And it's what you're saying is, I have to evaluate, is it, you know, am I going to get enough? This could be great. And I love going there, but I look at the customer base and I'm like, boy, if I put together a plan for this, the best I could hope for is X, and I'm spending Y, not only money, but time. That is something that I think when people think about, oh, they cut me from doing that, the company time. That's something I'm very, when I'm selling to attendees, I always have something about how expensive their time is for them and their organization. I mean, sales and marketing people, that's the show that I produce for that level of executive. They never have time. Their hair is always on fire. So how do I make it valuable enough where 3 days out of the office?
Yeah.
And, you know, who's going to walk the dog, and how are the kids going to get to school? And I mean, there are so many behind the world, behind what I can see decisions. I have to respect that, you know, that it's a process for people. So
now
that's huge.
Yeah. So I want to flip it around and talk about speakers for a minute. So whether I am speaking at an event, or whether I have a town hall meeting, or even a small group of managers, I'll make it easy for you. And I'll say, give me 3 things. And, 3 things that you think about what makes a great speaker. I mean, people say they're highly engaging. What does that mean, right? Like, if you would say there are 3 things that great speakers seem to always do, what would you say those are?
Number 1 is make it about the audience. Never talk about yourself if you can avoid it. I mean, other than here's who I am, here's what I do to establish credibility. You got to be really audience centric. And that doesn't mean just the information. It means, from the soul, you are being of service to that audience, and they will feel it if it's true. So that would be number 1. Number 2 is prepare. So we, as you know, at Smash have a facility where we Sherpa all our speakers.
I love
because
it.
we know that you don't know about senior care necessarily, but what you do know about is your expert, you're a topic expert. If somebody isn't doing that for you in the conference and you're on a conveyor belt of here's your confirmation, here's your blah, 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 get on with that conference producer and force a call. Like say, look, can you just give me somebody? Can you be on that call? I just need an hour to say, here's what I'm talking about. What's most relevant to you in, you're a retailer, you're a small retailer. Tell me what your 3 biggest challenges are around your sales initiatives these days, and try and ask the conference producer to try and find somebody who's aligned with what you do. And it will, the company that bought my company last year had never actually attended, and they sent, boatloads of people. And one of the, my boss now, who's, very senior in the company, said, why are all your sessions like keynotes? I've never seen anything like it.
Wow.
And believe me, it's not me. I just know from years of doing this, the reason they're like keynotes is because keynotes always get that.
Yep.
No matter what event, a keynote will get that hour conversation. And that is what makes a big difference. So that's number 2. And number 3, it's a weird thing, but it's a physical thing. And it's, it's a physical thing, which is when you start, don't talk. Stand at the podium and let the room settle. You got to give yourself air and space. It will just flow better. And throughout, slow down. And I'm going to put in a 4th and then I'm done. Because some cannot be interactive. They are, teaching things, they are whatever. Recent experience, you got to try and make it interactive if you can, on some level. I had a recent experience, and again, I know you're editing this, so you may not want to include it, but I was asked to do the final keynote for a sales meeting for one of our communities or companies, and there were maybe 200 or 300 people there. And I was told it was going to be a 20-minute wrap up. So I come in day 3, they said, come in day 3, listen to the work breakouts and all of that, and you'll see what we're talking about. And then Thursday you can do that. And then Thursday night you'll write, you'll prepare or whatever. And then 20 minutes on Friday. Try to fly out of New York I get delayed. No sessions do I get to see, or any brainstorming on Wednesday. Thursday, my phone breaks down, and I had decided, since it was only 20 minutes, I didn't need my computer. I had no communication source at all. I had to go get a new phone because, I had a job to do as well as this. And on Wednesday night, when I got in, I saw that I had an hour, and I was following. I had an hour that I had to fill, not 20 minutes. So, because like 20 minutes I could do, right? I didn't think I needed a PowerPoint or anything, right? I was following the person who wrote Grit, the book. Oh, and I was the final. So everyone was waiting to go home. I was in a I wasn't even in a panic. Here's what I've learned. First, do the necessary, then do the possible, and the impossible will take care of itself. That was St. Francis of Assisi. It was not Tony Robbins. Okay. And I saw that one year when I was in the depths of despair. I so overwhelmed. It was the first year I started Smash. And I saw that and I thought, okay, I can do the necessary. So the necessary was, I went and grabbed, when I saw that on Wednesday, on Thursday, what little time I had, I grabbed everybody's notes. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I grabbed everyone's notes. And I sat down with the person who had invited me. She gave me her computer, and I said, they had something they were going to do on Thursday, go on a boat ride. I was like, no boat ride. I'm staying in my, I got to write a PowerPoint. And I thought, and I thought, they were talking about operations and HR and sales and marketing, but basically the big operations, senior housing and senior living is a big operational. It's much more. That's where the heft is, right? HR and operations. So I don't know much about that, and I certainly didn't, because I wasn't in any of the brainstorming sessions. So I decided I would put everything through the customer lens, through the sales and marketing customer lens, like how everything impacted ultimately whether a customer would come or not. Because it was what I could do. It was what I knew, right? So then once I got to that was the necessary. I needed to figure out a way, right? To get to be able to engage on some level why I was the person wrapping this up. And then I thought, okay, well, an hour, 45 minutes can be not enough time to actually have any kind of engagement exercise, but these guys are out the door. So I went to the owner, who I know quite well, the next day, and I said, I'm spending $600 of your money, and I gamified it. And so as I'm going through each one of these, parts of the operations and how it might impact the customer or the sale, they had all come up with ideas in these brainstorming sessions, and I tried to, I should have put it through ChatGPT. I didn't have time. It was all handwritten. Otherwise I would have done it. As to come up with the three biggest concepts, right? And I had them raise their hand, which one they thought would work the best, and then had them talk a little bit about it. I do my little spiel, then that, and I said, and I gave them index cards and dots. And I said, every time you raise your hand and ask a question, put a dot. And the people who, we've got 4 prizes, $300, $200, whatever it looked like, right? And you're going to give it to Cindy at the end, and you're going to get money. So just, put those dots on there. And I'll tell you, it was very, very lively.
Wow.
And it turned out and no one left. Everybody stayed. And the owner, and as I said, she's a friend, and I was nervous for that. I wasn't getting paid or anything, like I wanted to do well, and I wanted her to be proud. And so it turned out fine, but
Wow.
it wasn't because I knew so much about it. It was because of these little concepts, right? Of engagement, of, speaking from the heart. I didn't need to know everything about operations. I didn't need to know any of that. I needed to know from my topic, from my expertise, how it might apply to them.
And you came up with sorry. Did I interrupt?
No, I was just going to say, and so when I asked the owner, Lynn, I said, I'm going to spend your money. And I said, but the only thing I'm going to concentrate is you guys making more money. She was like, I'm in.
That's great. That's great. And you gave a really great tip for when you are the last speaker, the last day of a conference. Oh my gosh. Nobody wants that spot.
Nope. And yet, it can be, you are going to have less people, that's just going to happen, but it doesn't mean you're going to have less engaged people.
Yes.
If they're staying and they're there and you're there to be of service to them, it's going to be a great session.
Yep.
Last year, we have an area of senior living called post-acute, which is when somebody's sort of skilled nursing, or it's I call it crossing the Medicare line, right? There's private pay all the way up to that. And then once you are hospitalized and need anything after that, that's, Medicare pays. And it's a smaller part of the industry. They don't do a lot of marketing. They do sales. It's a business to business. It's referral selling. And, we've grown it over the years, but it's, I would say at max about a third of our people. And so it's never a big audience. And last year we had a fantastic session. It had 4 people in the room. And let me tell you, 3 of them were board members. And the speaker thought it was fabulous.
Wow.
Because it was so they ended up running with it, that it was private. It was like 4 people, the people who participated were not like, oh, there was no one else. They were like, oh my God, that was just the best. So keeping an open mind and saying what I think is going to be successful, 70 people in the room and blah, blah, blah. And if it's not that, I'm not,
right.
They're one of those little mentor sayings that I've kept, all these years is, if I lower my level of expectation to 0 in all situations, and that doesn't mean saying nothing's going to be any good, or I'm lowering my standards. What it means is, if I can just get all of that expectation out of the way, most of the time I'm elevated at the end. If I have an expectation higher than that and it doesn't meet it, I am disappointed. And there's no difference except mindset.
Yep. I was just going to say, there you are, back to mindset. Okay, now I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about an aging population and seniors in our community. And if you remember, the first, when I talked to you about coming on the podcast, I wanted you to talk as a senior living expert. And then we really started talking about everything that this podcast has been about, and decided to shift gears. And thank you very much, because you have referred us over to an excellent expert in this field who will be talking to us. But
that's the CEO, by the way.
Yes, I know. I'm very excited.
Who I spoke for. Yeah, Lynn. She's fantastic.
Oh, okay. So that's who will be coming on one of our future podcasts. So I'm very excited about that. Oh, that's great. But I would be remiss not to talk to you about a few things. It's huge. you know, the aging population, the demographic size of the aging population is larger than ever as baby boomers are aging into that, you know, are getting older. It's becoming the largest sector of our, or the largest portion of our demographic, shockingly. And you know, I wanted to ask you, I've seen some of your articles and posts, and I really appreciate the perspective and the thinking that you bring over to social media. But what would you say would be one of your biggest concerns as you look around and think ahead about the senior population in the United States?
Money. It
Money.
all comes down to money. And you could just, everything flows from that.
Wow.
Affordable senior housing, you know, the majority of people who are becoming seniors in this country, or are seniors from the baby boomers, right, took their Social Security at 62. So they have a lowest Social Security check. Many of them, that's all they have. I want to say 35 to 45% have zero. The remaining up to about 80 or 90% have $250,000 in the bank, which will last no time. Medicaid does certain things, but it doesn't do other things. And housing and food is a big issue,
Wow.
right? You need both. Like those are basic human core, you know. And so two things are happening in that arena. One is we don't have enough affordable housing, period, but certainly senior housing is they've been working at this on this even middle class senior housing, because senior housing is it's private pay and it's very expensive, and so they can't figure it out. They can't make it work financially. And so, you know, it's been on the boards for a long time, the associations, everyone's been working on financial. It seems to be the elusive unicorn. So affordable housing, there is affordable senior housing in a lot of places, but it's not a lot. And it's expensive because it's government driven, and it's fine. And my God, I wish there were more. And, you know, but there's not. And I don't know what's going to happen. And then memory care, which is huge, because as we are a population that's aging longer, you know, once you start aging, you know, the average lifespan is, and so cognitive decline, it doesn't have to be Alzheimer's. Cognitive decline happens. It can happen even at the level of being dangerous enough where it's not a deadly disease like Alzheimer's, but people forget to take their medication. They don't have family members around to help them, you know, and they're also, speaking of housing, there are rules about not being able to do mother-in-law apartments, or people don't have enough room in their home. They've got 4 kids. Like it's not that people don't want to take their parents in. It's not necessarily, or they have to work 2 jobs and what, you know, like it's a travesty, I guess, is what I would say. And what we hear, and this is really not political, it's economic, is, oh my God, Social Security, Medicare, we're going to run out of money, right? We have a huge bulge in the boa constrictor right now. And that boa constrictor bulge has to be served unless we want seniors living on the streets or in tents with no food. I just don't see any other, you know, there's no other solution right now, because there are regulations about how, you know, all of that stuff that I just discussed. So we're going to have to spend more right now for the next 10, 15 years. But guess what? After that, our population is lower. So what? We spend the money now because we're going to spend less 15 years from now. No one talks about that. I don't know why. No one actuarially has said, yeah, we're going to have a big bump in our, you know, spending because of seniors. But then it's just the boa, you know, none of us are there forever. I don't know how else to say that, but I don't know why the conversation doesn't continue after we're going to run out of money. We don't have to run out of money. We're a big country. We just don't have to run out of money. And, you know, what's the alternative? I just don't know what that's going to look like. So housing and food and money, biggest problem.
So, yeah, we could have a lot of conversation about that. Okay, so let's talk about, so that's really good food for thought. Let's talk about some of the good things that are happening out there that you're seeing. So what are some of the positive things that are happening, changing how we manage or think about our aging population again in the United States in terms of meeting needs or improving quality of life?
Oh, there's a tremendous amount. I mean, if people can get those basic services,
Mhm.
right? Like if we didn't have to worry about that so much, there's so much being done on a technological front to make it easier for people as they age to age in place, for sure. But also the recognition that there's a real psychological, we were talking about this earlier, that it's physical and it's psychological. And the pandemic really ripped that wide open for seniors in particular. It's ripped it wide open for everybody. Loneliness is a terrible, terrible psychological problem for kids, for people, but for seniors in particular, it's always been that way. And now the pandemic kind of ripped open the kimono on that, and so people are really, there are many agencies and not-for-profits and people with the idea that to be able to live their best life, seniors have to be engaged, and if they feel purposeful, and all of those things stem around having a community somehow, some community somehow, like, is it my church? Is it my gardening club? Is it 3 gardening clubs? Like whatever that looks like, and also health. That's a really big positive, being able to, a lot of people, once they really start to age, and we consider old in the senior housing and senior care industry to be 80 and above. That's, up to then you're just a senior. So the old, physically people just start to have less ability, right? But there's so much recognition around that, and programs, and again, city agencies, things that are sponsored by governmental agencies that are available to people. And so there's a lot more opportunity to live your best life, even with less money, that's out there. And that's exciting. There's a lot of exciting things going on in that arena. And some of them are as simple as finding they're allowing dogs, in these small apartments, or even fake dogs. Again, artificial intelligence, where that people can communicate. I mean, it's loneliness is something that really is a major problem, and there's a lot of solves out there right now.
Man, I'm with you on that. We had a conversation that really hit me hard because my mom lives with us, and even though she has her own apartment, right? So it's on our property. And during the pandemic, she had some misdiagnosis that went on, and she basically had to learn how to walk all over again. It was just rough. I won't get into the details, but she's no longer able to drive, which completely threw her world upside down. A woman that went to the park almost every day with my dog, and actually we've got a dog for her now, so we're a multi-dog family now. But anyway, she couldn't drive, which took away her one sense of independence. Even though we'd say we drive her, it still is different. And I got to tell you, she went through. It was. After we went through the pandemic, so there was a lot of isolation then, and she went through it like a trooper. Never got COVID because really nobody was going anywhere. She took a trip to go visit my sister in Portland, past COVID. Everybody in that house caught COVID, including my mom. So after she was able to come back home, she was fine, but she was isolated for a long period of time and had almost a mini breakdown mentally, right? It was so hard. She's perfectly fine now, but I can't say enough about, even if people are within your own home. She talks about things like, when we have our big family dinners, a lot of people there, right? She has hearing issues, and the younger people are congregating together. The middle-aged working people are congregating together, and she feels she's kind of there. Like, they're polite, everybody says hi, but nobody sits down to have a deep conversation, right? So she's lonely in the midst of people. And I feel that, it's something that I am intentionally working to be aware of, to come up with solutions and ideas to at least talk to her about, in how we get her out of that feeling of isolation, and figure out good solutions for how she can engage.
Well, as you know, we talked about my dad who we had the exact same experience, you know, we didn't have big family dinners. We didn't have a big family, but he'd been deaf from the war. I mean, not totally
Yeah.
deaf, very hard of hearing. He was a scientist, so he didn't have a lot of, interpersonal need in a way. Like, I don't know if say all scientists are like that, but he was really a mind guy.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we just didn't know how isolated and alone he was.
Yeah.
So he stopped driving. And, you know, that it just exacerbated it. But again, he was finally through, you know, this shattered leg, forced to go into, or not forced, but he needed to go into a place where they could a deal with assisted with daily living. And it was a veterans home, and he had been a vet, he was a vet. And I will tell you that it put 3 years on his life.
Wow.
Just, you know, I mean, he wasn't like chatty, but there was for him, he could go to services on Sunday in the building. And of course, we picked him up and took him out to dinner from time to time, not a ton. We were both raising small kids, but we lived close enough by where we were visiting at least once a week, and one or the other of us, or both of us, my brother and I. And but he was actually more interested in the people there. I mean, he when we came to the kids, but like, you know, like he ended up with a life. It wasn't exactly, but I will say, adult daycare is doing a lot better, and it's a terrible word for a good thing.
Mhm.
There are places and spaces where seniors can go, and they are with other seniors who, you know, and they do some interesting, engaging things. You know, there's one in New York City that I have the privilege of going to and sometimes doing some volunteer work at, and they do art projects and masks. I mean, it's not bingo, you know, it's really stuff that they want to do and work on, and they're of all skills and sizes and, you know, ages within a senior age range. But I will tell you what I see there between the people is that they can talk amongst themselves. They are with people.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
You know, they are with people who they really can have a deep conversation with. They can make a friendship. And even though your mom can't drive, one of the things that has been a huge, actually, I wouldn't have thought of this until you mentioned it, that actually has been huge for people, is Uber and Lyft.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's not full independence, but you can call your own Uber, or, you know, learn how to manage that on your phone. And if you want to go to the adult day center 3 days a week, you do it, you know, and you figure it out. And, you know, a lot of it's Medicaid driven, just because it was considered to be just another kind of health service, but I think that's shifting now. I would encourage anyone who, you know, calls someplace and they say, oh, we only take Medicaid, go down there personally and say, what can I do to contribute? Can I make a donation every month so my mom can, you know, I would like my mom to come, but I'm happy to make a donation. I know it sounds I go back to risk. Like, what's someone going to say? No, I did that with my kids when I had to get them into daycare for less than $3,000 a week or whatever it was in New York, you know, and I went to a place and they said, oh no, we're a Medicaid facility. And it wasn't a facility. It was a beautiful townhouse with fabulous teachers. And they took them from 6 a.m. till like 7 p.m, which is what I needed. And I said, how much can I donate and see if my daughter can come? And, the woman was kind of shocked, and she said, whatever she said, it was not $3,000 a day, whatever Montessori was charging. It was, I mean, I couldn't believe how little it was. I bumped it up and I said, I will give this to you every month. And she used it completely. You could see she didn't take a dime of it. She used it completely to make this, you know, the daycare better. So she might've said no, but you know, needed a solution.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Being creative. So, I'm gonna like throw a little tip out there for people, because my mom, in the state of Georgia, when we were I was looking at different solutions for her around driving, and you know, she didn't like the Uber Lyft. I don't know, because then you got to wait too long, was her feedback. She did it once, but okay. But there are a couple things going on. There are actually 15 rides. That's a lot, but my mom doesn't go out more than once a week. 15 one-way rides that the state has covered for you. It's $1 commute, like one way. So that was one thing. But the other thing that we did explore for her that she's doing that has worked out really well for her she wanted to be comfortable with the person who was there and have some consistency around that. So I went out to next door. That's it. And I said, okay, here's what we're dealing with. You know, my mom is 84. She can no longer drive, went from every day to not being able to go. She really likes just one day a week. She likes to go to Kroger. My mom likes to go to thrift stores because she looks for certain things. She has an eBay store and it's a successful one. And I had a lot of responses that I never expected that were really great fits. And the person, my mom, when I shared it with her, I didn't tell her before. I just shared after, and she said, oh, "Do you mind if I call them to work out the relationship?" Because she wants that sense, of course, of empowerment. I'm like, yes. So now there's a woman who's 70, retired, had taken care of her mother-in-law for a few years the same way that we're talking about, just drove her around for her groceries. They go get groceries. This woman gets her groceries while my mom is getting hers. Because my mom said, "Don't follow me around." And the woman said, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, grocery shop or something." So now the woman grocery shops when my mom does. And she worked out a good solution for someone that, understands what her needs are, her need for independence. And they're becoming friends, right? So my mom pays her because she wants to pay her. It's very affordable. That works for my mom. The woman is, doing something that fulfills her, and it ended up being a win-win. So I would say be creative on that stuff and ask within your community.
That is a phenomenal solution. And, and also make sure, wherever you live and go to the Center for Aging Services.
Hey, yep.
No matter what, even if it's nothing that you need now, you'll find out what's available statewide. Like I don't know that New York has that, but they may. I haven't been to the Department of Aging Services here. In New York, they have a ton of stuff, but going back to start there and then get creative, because what a phenomenal idea. The other thing that on this housing issue that people are just starting to do, I live in an apartment, and I have rules because I'm in a co-op, right? So I can't do some of this, and New York City can't, unfortunately. But as people age, my kids are leaving the house, hopefully sooner than later is my hope. They're still launching, which, because of money these days, it's hard, particularly.
It's taking longer to launch. Yeah.
But when they do, I don't know that I can have, actually, I don't think I can have an outside family member, but many people own homes and their kids leave. And, I can speak for myself. I worked my whole life. I love my children. They were my world, except when they weren't, which was work, and I traveled all the time for business. They're like, I was never home. Like, do you actually remember me? And they're like, you were never not home. So they don't remember how much I literally lived on the road. So, so I missed them when they were gone. When they, when they finally did launch to a degree, they are, they're in their early to mid 20s, and they don't even living home. It's a very different relationship. And for a mom, if I were somebody that had a house, I might not do it today, but in another couple of years, maybe at 70 or 68, I would absolutely think about roommate situation.
Wow.
Even with my husband, I would say, is there someone out there that, we can traverse with, that maybe next door or something, for someone who can't afford a rent of $3,000 a month because their social security check is, I guess it's a bit of a risk. People get, hurt. But if people don't start doing things like that, but it, it also can satisfy the person who's doing it in a big way.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because my sisters and I and my best friend, we all have a pact that we'll live together, if we need to, right? But that's what we're going to do. And we've talked about it for years, which I think is interesting. So I am a big fan of believing that anyone at any stage and age in life can have a good quality of life. For me personally, I'm not about living to 100 and being ill, but living to whatever age it is. And I have, what goals I want, how I want to age. So it's a quality of life. And, if you could say there were like three things, I'm going to bring up the three things again, that people could do later stage in life, even, right? So I believe at any age you can improve your health and well-being. Or those of us that aren't as, maybe we're middle-aged or younger, like what 3 things would you say would be great for them to think about, consider, and practice that could improve their whole quality of life?
Well, I think your dad has it nailed, but I'll say the 3 things. And certainly, this is statistically proven in our industry, but it's what you talked about with your sisters and, however that looks, build community. And it may not be your family, and it may eventually not be your family. You have to have a community, whatever that looks like. It may be a bridge club. It may be a bridge club and a Mahjong club. I don't know, whatever that looks like for people. If they can't work full time, or they can't work part time, or they can't, but the next thing would be purpose. You have to have purpose.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's one day a week going to the thrift store for your eBay store, that's purpose. If it's, depending on your physical ability, people think, oh, I only want to live as long as I'm all together, right? Like I have everything. Life doesn't work that way. And old age doesn't work that way. Certainly. Young people become, my husband's father was very involved in the Americans with Disabilities Act. He was the guy who was handing George Bush Sr. the pen on the front page of the New York Times when the ADA was signed into law with his foot, because he was born with no arms. And he could do everything. He had 5 beautiful sons. He had a wonderful wife, and he worked, tirelessly until he passed away in his 90s for Americans with Disabilities. He was a minister. And but that was really his main focus. Wrote a number of books, and one was Greet the Man, which I love the title. It says it all, which is, he used to always say, I am not disabled. We are all just temporarily abled.
Wow.
So
how beautiful is that?
He really, I knew him when I was a kid, and I grew up with them, and my husband and I didn't date that whole time, but I knew that we grew up in the same neighborhood. And the thing is, he was absolutely right. Like I've seen young people become incapacitated in certain ways and find their way through that, or not. But it's, again, I go back to mindset. I think people shouldn't close their mind to the idea that they can still have a full life. I have a very dear friend who's 70, who has macular degeneration. She will be blind in another 2 years. It has been a really hard, tough mental road, knowing that's going to happen, but also, it's a slow pace. And so things keep getting taken away. Right.
Yeah.
But it's a mindset. Like her life is not going to end because she can't see. And luckily she had found through a community, some people who are in their 90s who have lost their sight in their 70s, and were able to regroup that loss and still have community purpose, and, and still have a very fulfilling life. So I would just say people should keep an open mind. There's lots of ways to have community and purpose. Those are the 2 things, so that loneliness is not the thing that's going to take you out, because actually loneliness is the biggest killer for old people. Literally, it will take years off your life, and you can't find a way around that, either through the Department of Aging Services or through some kind of home, a home situation, or the ability to have. But, again, it's complicated today because we don't live in the same towns and villages as our parents. We live 3,000 miles away, and it's a more complicated scenario, but and it can be very time consuming, particularly as someone gets older, and or if they have a illness or a terminal illness. You always think you're ahead of the curve. Oh, I know. She can't see. I'm just going to get a big button phone and blah, blah, blah. And it's done. It's like one and done. That is not the way aging works. It's not the way illness works. It's a constant, okay, this works for today. Is there something I can do for tomorrow? And I say this like it's a light situation. It is so challenging for people. And I would say the third thing is have caregivers who take care of themselves, because most everybody has a family caregiver, or 2 or 3. And if your caregiver isn't taking care of themselves, and you're not allowing them to do that, not because you're being mean or you're just scared or whatever, you're gonna put yourself in a position to be hurt. And I don't mean physically. I just mean people are gonna really resent that.
Wow, those are great things for people to consider. Thank you so much for that, Bailey. So I've got one last question for you. And
Okay.
I'd love to ask my guests. It's a little bit of a game. So if you have all your wisdom and knowledge that you have today, you got it, like it's right there. And now you're back in your 20s. What would you tell yourself? What would you do differently or not? And what would you say that, you would give yourself some advice that might make your life journey easier or different? Or would you say, I do nothing at all? So,
Oh, I would have a long, drawn out talk with that.
yeah, I know.
But I guess one of the things is, I was a planner. So whenever something came up, particularly around people and places and work, like when somebody wouldn't return my call, it was a sales call, right? I had a partner who used to say to me, it's either because somebody died, they're getting a divorce, or, and inevitably that was the thing. And also, if something big was about, like I had to, whatever big thing was about to happen at work, I would think about plan A, plan B, plan C, and I would go to plan C. And inevitably, because things are iterative, there's no one answer when you're starting a big question, right? Whether it's looking for another job or hoping to get the big contract or whatever that is. It was always ZB combination of, or nothing I'd even thought of. So I would say to my 20-year-old self, just let the process unroll. You are smart enough and good enough that whatever the next thing that the next piece of information is in front of you, you're going to put the puzzle together faster with less stress. I would just, my God, if because, I see a lot, I did it. A lot of people young and starting out or even mid-career are like, I got to figure this out. I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
You got to let go of figuring it out. You are smart enough and good enough. You will figure it out better by just waiting for the next piece of information. The other thing I would say to my 20-year-old self is, don't worry your life away.
Mm-hmm.
You only have this one world. Don't worry your life away. I worried a lot of my life away, and I'm not proud of it. I'm not, but it's the truth. I worried about everything, and I could have worried about 10% of it, and the outcomes would have been no different. Worrying does not solve a problem. And I guess I would just say the third thing I would say is something I wouldn't have changed, is just, to your point, stay curious. Like, nothing lasts. Again, I have no good wisdom. Everything I've heard is from other people. Is it going to matter 5 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
When I put that test against a lot of things, whether it's in my life or in my business, a lot of it falls by the wayside. Not really going to matter 5 years from now. So why am I investing? I have only so much energy. I've got to invest it in the place that is going to give me the greatest return, whether that's in my home life, my personal life, my work life, my revenue life, whatever that looks like. I've got to constantly be thinking about, is my energy going into the right place? Period.
Well, Bailey, thank you so much for sharing things from your heart, from your mind, things that you've learned. I really appreciate you being here today. I hope that you'll come back. And I do look forward to seeing you this fall at Smash. It'll be really
I am thrilled that you said yes. Thank you so much. And I am also looking forward to seeing you in the fall at Smash. So thank you. And thank you for inviting me on this wonderful podcast show. I don't know what they call it these days. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.